Good evening. Welcome along to the Newcastle United Takeover Talk with me, Steve Wraith, and two guests tonight. Got Bill Corcoran from the Foodbank, a well-known Newcastle fan. And if you've ever been in the Tyneside Irish Centre before or after the match, I'm sure you'll have bumped into Bill either on the door or on the microphone. But welcome, Bill.
Hello, Steve. Hello, Shell.
And secondly, and last but not least, always got to leave the best last, a late addition to tonight's show. We have Michelle, Red Rose Michelle, as she's known on Twitter, and she's certainly been helping the lads out with Gallagher's shots, keeping things right from the legal perspective. Well worth checking out her Twitter because she's always got her finger on the button with the legals. Hi, Michelle. Nice to have you on the show.
Evening. Thanks for having me.
Good stuff. Okay, let's talk a little bit about tonight in the Evening Chronicle. What we've seen first of all is an article by Andrew Musgrove about the Supporters Trust once again writing to Lee Charnley at Newcastle United and talking about the money which is outstanding to supporters. Obviously, no more games this season will be seen by anybody at St James's Park. So we have the outstanding money on season tickets, but we also have money that's been paid out on tickets for the away games and for the FA Cup. What we've had back from the club, though, as supporters is zero, nil, nada, whatever you want to call it. We've had absolutely nothing. So what's your views, Shell, on that, first of all? Do you feel, that we're in the midst of a takeover, but we should be hearing something?
Yeah, I mean, I always feel like that, though, and I always feel like the club plays it very badly. They don't keep fans updated. All the fans really want to know. As you said, we just said before we came on, it's not that the fans are saying, give us our money back. It's saying, we need to know what's going on. And as usual, the club is saying absolutely nothing. And that's what's really winding people up, because you're seeing other clubs are making gestures, as they always do, to fans if there's a problem with the match. And, it's quite right that the fans, make their voices known. I think, insofar as we can take good news from money being taken out of accounts, I think it would worry me more if they started issuing refunds whilst the takeover is in the middle. But yeah, I can totally see why fans are irritated, and I think we just, as always, under the Mike Ashley era, have to keep our expectations low in terms of getting any response from the club.
Yeah, Bill, same to you, really. It's no surprise, is it, that we've had no communication from St James's Park, and we probably won't until we have the new owners, I would imagine. Bill, could you hear us?
Sorry, mate. Yeah, sorry. I think you're right. We're in a classic interregnum. The king is dead and nobody knows who the new king is. And right now, if you're the gas board trying to get paid by the latest regime for the last 6 months, you're probably having the same sort of struggle as well, I would imagine. I think Shell's dead right. Somebody's got to sign off a check. And with companies and corporate entities, when you have cash handling procedure, it doesn't matter if it's a penny or £1 million, it has to go through procedure. I think that's probably why I've not detected a great deal of aggravation as such from Newcastle fans. I mean, put it this way, if we'd paid money in for something else and it had gone wrong, I think there would have been total hell on. But, Steve, you're right to point out there's people who are furloughed, there's people who are losing money, there's people whose businesses and jobs are in jeopardy, and a couple of £100 could be the difference between making a payment and staying in credit and being able to preserve their mortgage payment at the minute. So it isn't trivial. And right now, I think the Premier League have a duty of care. They've got a duty of care over the game. It ain't about who's the best takeover thing or what should be going on. They've got a duty of care over the game, and the game fundamentally is about the fans coming along to the match. And if the fans are getting shortchanged by information or by money, the Premier League should be coming up and finding out exactly what's going on, and either saying, look, and lasses, we've got it covered. It'll be okay. News is coming out. Give it a week or so, or a month or so, or whatever. Or they should be saying, we insist these people receive an offer of compensation of some sort, and that could be, you can leave your money in and give it to charity. You could donate it to the Newcastle United Foundation, the Bobby Robson Foundation, the Newcastle United Fans Food Bank. There's many others. you could take it as next season's new strip. I don't know. There's probably loads more creative minds than mine could think of these things. But right now, as you say, every month that goes on, it's another direct debit. And every day that goes on, people are thinking, hang on, when we were supposed to play Man City back in the dim and distant, times before COVID-19 that you can't quite remember. So I think it's going to get worse, and it will build as an issue because it is real and people will be suffering, and people aren't supposed to suffer because of football.
Yeah, good point. John Ball says, how do you guys feel about the way we have treated Matty Longstaff and the contract situation? Obviously, the latest on that, where this has come from, I don't know, but we can't get any communication from the club with regards to season tickets, yet someone seems to say that we've offered him, between £15,000 and £20,000 now for wages, when Udinese have offered him 30,000. It does sound like a Newcastle kind of deal, of course. Whenever anybody offers somebody something, we always tend to offer under. Shell, what do you think about the way that Matty Longstaff's contract situation has been, left till the last minute?
Well, again, I mean, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I don't think any of us are surprised. And that is the problem with the Mike Ashley era. This is not the first time that he's treated players badly. It's not the first time that, he's effectively treated the club as an absolute business. He doesn't care about, young players that he brings in from other clubs. All he cares about is training them up so that he can sell them to other clubs for more money, as he's done with every decent striker we've had lately. And it's the same story again with Matty Longstaff. And it feels more personal for the Geordies. Of course it does, because he's just come into the team. He's given away his money to charity whenever he's been asked to. He's genuinely showed passion for the club, and here we are yet again saying we're just going to chuck him away. And obviously with the takeover news, everyone should be really skeptical about what's actually happened. And I see lots of people on Twitter and on the live comments and here saying there's absolutely no way that he'd be commanding that sort of money. I think ultimately we don't know, but for me, it's just another nail in the Mike Ashley coffin, and another reason that the fans need this takeover, so that we can have, as soon as we get a decent player in, we don't have to worry about every single other club just being able to come in and poach him for 50p more than Mike Ashley's, latest pair of socks is selling for.
Yeah, good point, Bill.
I remember when Gaza, Waddle and Beardsley left Newcastle United, there was a church down the road in Heaton, and it had a sign up saying, if God seems so far away, then who moved? And somebody, I kind claim it was me, went up and rode Gaza, Beardsley and Waddle. And it felt so much sharper than a normal player leaving because they were Geordies. And I think Matty Longstaff, he looked a hell of a player. I mean, what would I know? I was a centre half in the Newcastle Central Sunday Afternoon League. I wouldn't know a footballer if one ran past me, and plenty did. But to me, he looked balanced and energetic, and he looked really good. And that should have been the first thing on our priority going back last year. We should never be in a situation where he's put in a. I know you can overpay footballers, and that's what clubs do. And I suppose one of the things that Newcastle United's done well is it's restricted its wage to turnover to 54%, and that is a lot than cousins down the got situations like that. But for God's sakes, you lose a Geordie, you lose a good midfield buzzing terrier goal scorer, and a pair of brothers. I mean, Jesus, surely a God. They can at least have a word with them and say, I mean, and Shell, I think you said before, it could have been used to, he hasn't signed a pre-contract agreement with anybody. That gives us a bit of hope. I think the next few years at Newcastle could be very, very special. This is an amazing city with an incredible club, and we could be a real force in not just world football, but the way societies live and design themselves and get on with each other. That's why I believe we're the subject of a takeover bid, not because we're a brilliant football team now, but because they see something in our city and our people and our region. And you're thinking, exemplifying that is a pair of brothers from North Shields who go along and help in their community. They've been pre-match at the Foodbank and helped out and had a word. They're good lads, and I just think it's crazy to think of them being allowed to go elsewhere, unless we say, well, sorry lads, but you know, you're not good enough to get in whatever midfield we're going to have or whatever. But to me, I think he looks really special. And to be honest, I can't believe that nobody in the Premiership are going for them, unless, of course, this is a disguised move by Watford, who I think Watford and Udinese have a kind of relationship. So maybe it's that. I don't know. But to me, I just think Matty should stay put, even if he becomes a free agent, and not go to Udinese, even though they're playing black and white. You know, I think it's the wrong move. And if he does go on loan and come back, you know.
Yeah, Tom Dixon says Ashley's run our club very badly. I can't wait for him to leave. I don't think you'll get many arguments from fans on that, Tom. Paul Coombs says, I think Ashley has gone, and this is why there has nothing been said about the tickets, obviously referring to what we were talking about at the top of the show. Glenn O'Neill says, there's no way Udinese were offering Matty 30 grand a week. I don't care what anyone says, which, you know, I suppose could point to what you were saying, Bill. It could be Watford in disguise. Doug Hall, I always laugh when I see that name. It's not Douglas Hall, it's Doug Hall. Is there anybody actually working at the club, Steve? It's a good question. We know Steve Nixon was taken off furlough, but other than that, nobody really knows. I've seen the odd groundsman leaving Gateshead to head up there, who I know, but it's a strange situation at Newcastle at the minute. I did see an interesting message, which is from Mark Dalton, and he says he listened to George Colton this afternoon, which I haven't managed to catch up on, but he said that both sides, Ashley and Staveley, are talking in regards to players' contracts. So I've always pointed towards George as an oracle of things that are going on, which most journalists aren't, it has to be said, but George certainly is. And if George says that, there has to be some kind of element of truth in it, I would suggest. So, you know, it'll be interesting. Mark Sargent asks the next question. He says, do you think that the Premier League are holding out for the report from WTO? Now, obviously, Shell, we've seen more letters come into this than we've seen to the BBC post bag on Points of View about this takeover. There's never been as much interest in as a takeover, I don't think. What's your thoughts on the process, Shell? Because we're all being led down this garden path of, you know, it's now running over, it's now running late. And the reason that that's come about is because we all saw the paperwork that was lodged at the company's house, which had a date on it. So then naturally, Newcastle fans think, right, well, it takes on average 5 to 6 weeks for a takeover to be done. Shouldn't we be done now? What's your take on it? And do you think that the Premier League are holding out for various reports?
Well, the Premier League has to make a decision based on the information that they've got. A lot of, and I say this carefully, a lot of reliable sources such as The Guardian suggest that the Premier League already have a copy of this report. I think it is taking ages. I think that's the problem that we've seen other takeovers go through. But the Premier League have no doubt been distracted by Project Restart. The Premier League, if you think about their normal capacity, they haven't hired anybody extra. So they're now running a normal legal team with Project Restart and with all of this takeover. And I think now that part of the reason for the delay is because everything they do now is so highly scrutinised. They have to be 100% sure that when they release the news about the takeover, that they have covered all of the bases, they've dealt with all of the objections, and they've assured themselves that they've got to a point where, you know, that they can confidently say that there won't be any appeals or anything further to happen. And obviously, we spoke last night to Tom, who's behind the football law, and he was saying, you know, from an outsider's perspective, just relax. You know, it isn't actually taking all that long. It's a very, very complicated process. He said, as a corporate lawyer looking at all of the elements that we've seen on Companies House, you know, we both still had an interpretation of those documents and what they mean. And it is just going to take a really long time to get from that point to where we are now. And there's also a number of factors of negotiation. So there's the points about piracy. And the reality is that, you know, they'll have to look into that. And they've got the report from the World Trade Organization. I don't think that ultimately will cause them to fail the owners and directors test. But I do think that it's a lot more complicated than all of us first thought. And I think that is one of the reasons that it's taking quite a long time. That combined with all of the other factors, the coronavirus, the Project Restart. But if people say, well, yeah, hang on a minute, surely they can't just keep waiting and waiting for objections to come in every week. That's just ridiculous. No, they can't. The Premier League have to take a point and say, these are the facts that we're taking into account. And of course, what we don't know is they might be in negotiations with PIF and other people saying, you know, for example, you can't have this director for these reasons because of this connection. And there might be an ongoing dialogue there, certainly for our firm, my law firm, when we have commercial transactions, the whole firm is involved, which is thousands of people all putting in their own bit of due diligence for different parts and different bits. So it could just be that, you know, the Premier League are also in negotiations to make sure that if they are going to sign off on it, everything is in place. And so to answer the question, I don't think they're holding out for that report. I think they already have it. But I do think that there are some sensible reasons why it's taking a bit longer than we thought.
Yeah. On the same subject, Bill, James Wyman says, what do you think of Miguel Delaney saying this could go on till mid-June? Jim White saying nothing has started the other week and saying today it's nearly done. Look, obviously Twitter is probably, it's a nightmare scenario for a takeover, especially with it being Newcastle United. And these kind of things, which I've tried to point out on more than one occasion, you know, a lot of it's clickbait, a lot of it's stuff to get people talking, to get people to retweet, you know, and journalists, like a lot of people, are struggling. You know, a lot of people have been furloughed and laid off, and they need income. They need people to click on these links to pay, you know, to pay bills, you know, because it's you're clicking onto an article and it's generating income through advertising, etc. So these kind of comments that you're seeing, you know, what's your take on it, Bill? Do you think that's what it is, or do you think these people are doing it genuinely to try and inform fans?
I see some incredibly heroic journalists on the telly watching CNN, being in harm's way in America, getting pepper sprayed, getting arrested, you know, being heroic about the representation, trying to get the truth to the people. And then I look at people like Miguel Delaney, I think, and that fella who wrote that terrible article in the New Statesman, people who write for generally progressive, decent, or supposedly decent periodicals and newspapers, and they're just mischief makers, I think. I think the fundamental about this takeover, if it goes ahead, is that if Saudi Arabia is buying Newcastle United, they're not doing it because we're a Wahhabist stronghold on the northeast coast, which esteems Sharia law to be the top priority of our city. They're buying us not because we're a major oil producer, although it's interesting. Newcastle used to produce the world's biggest supplies of energy, portable energy in the form of coal. And they're soon to be in a situation in about 20 years' time when their major energy stuff isn't so much needed as it is now, i.e. oil for plastics and for cars and the rest of it. They're buying us, I think, because we're a friendly, engaging community full of people who want to have a good time, no matter where you come from, no matter who your grandparents were, no matter what, really, as long as you've got goodwill. And they're buying us because we go into things with an open heart and a unity of purpose. And that is something they can see is productive in the 21st century, when we've got a worldwide economy, where we've got, you know, 200 odd different nations, many, many different nationalities, creeds, colours, religions, orientations, all of that. And it sounds really strange for what has been, I think, by common consensus, a fairly absolutist, undiversified state to want to buy into a city such as ours, a people such as ours. But I think they're doing it because they're seeking to move their country into a different path. They can't carry on being what they are. They have to change. And one of the ways they're doing that is by diversing their economy. But part of that is, if you like, we're maybe the grit in their oyster. They need to show, what's the point of this? You know, the point of life is to enjoy yourself, to look after others, to take care of things. It is not to just get involved with politics and religion and that tired old process, which is just, you know, ended up with hundreds of years of dissension all over the world. The point is to grow and progress. And I think they're trying to do that. Now, I can see it from the perspective of Amnesty International, an organization I've always had a great deal of time for, despite the fact they don't treat some of the staff particularly well. I think they're a very honourable organisation. They must think that if Saudi Arabia buy Newcastle, and do something bad with that and use us to conceal whatever misdeeds they're planning on doing in the future, then lots of people in Newcastle, myself included, will be fervent supporters of Amnesty International against the Saudi regime. But if the Saudi regime do as I think they will, which is to use the fact that they're affiliated with an organization which is about unity, which is about, what's it called, the thing? Anyway, I've forgotten the slogan. It's about people looking after each other. Then that means they're seeking to change, and we should help and encourage that process. And I think that is in the direct foreign policy, aims of United States and Britain, because we want to be having a world, especially in the Middle East, which has been the subject. It's not their fault, I suppose. They've got all the oil there and people keep invading them. But it's been the subject of wars. Maybe good in years, instead of fighting, we'll talk about football and drink coffee and drive cars and have a leisure economy. And that's the process we should encourage. And maybe this is the first bit, and maybe it's a bit of a problem. But I guarantee you, if Saudi Arabia can do that and use us for that process, I think that's a fairly good thing. And yeah, there's going to be issues here and there. And I don't think in that sense the WTO, and Shell's the expert, she'll tell you, I think that the WTO doesn't have the power to compel people to attend a court and take a judgment. It's the sort of place where you go to get a bit of negotiation done. So they're going to maybe do that. But I think, generally speaking, if we've got to wait till the middle of the month, hey, Christ, we waited 13 years, we can wait another 14 days.
It's what I keep telling people, but unfortunately, people keep putting dates out there. My prediction was never a prediction for a date. I just said, look, I felt that when we saw the date on the paperwork at Company's House, that potentially the end of April would be the earliest we might hear something, but we didn't. But then sadly, since then, other people have put dates on it, June the 1st being the latest date. Steve Howie, of course, the other night on here said June the 9th, and he was repeating something that somebody'd said, and then he go, oh no, I've said June the 9th, now everybody will be blaming me. So it's one of those situations. It'll happen. And Glenn O'Neill's asking, do we think it'll happen? I mean, just a quick straw poll between the three of us. Yes, I personally do. Shell, do you?
Yeah, I think it will happen.
Bill, do you?
Yes.
Yeah, well, there we go. So the three of us think it's going to happen. We do, and I haven't had a guest on yet. Malcolm MacDonald, one of the biggest cynics of takeovers. Steve Howie, Rob Lee, all cynics of takeover, all being on here and all said it's going to go ahead. They feel it's going to go ahead, and they've all heard from different people as well, which is beneficial. Barry Layton says, do you think that they will pull out, i.e. the Saudis, because of all the insults they are getting, simply because they are very proud people that might just say enough is enough? I think we've gone too far down the road, Shell, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult because I don't actually know a lot about Saudi culture. But we had this conversation, before. I think that they will have expected a lot of what has been given as opposition. I don't think they would have expected all of it. And I think, as has been said, they do use, they have gone into this PIF arrangement consortium with other people that know a lot about football. Staveley knows a lot about football. She knows a lot about these types of transactions, the Man City connection. She will have definitely been saying, look, your human rights record is going to come under scrutiny. There's going to be a few people kicking off left, right and centre. There's obviously going to be some questions about the connection with Sheffield United. So I think they would have expected a good amount of this. They have got a lot of money, and people are saying, well, the deposit, whatever it is a drop in the ocean. But they're still businessmen at the end of the day. They're not just going to say, right, well, it's taken a couple of weeks longer than we thought, so we'll just pull out. This is part of their long-term plan. We've seen the Vision 2030, and all this is part of a long-term plan to invest in the country. So I think, I'm not sure how bothered they'll be about Katie on Twitter or whoever saying giving them lots of insults, or the letters that are coming in. I just don't think it will. I don't think Ben Salman's in his house now reading them thinking, well, maybe we should rethink this, lads. I just think as far as I'm concerned, the only person that has got form and is unpredictable here in this transaction is Mike Ashley.
I love the fact that you've got Ben Salmon saying lads already. Bill, I mean, it's not gonna happen, is it? They're not gonna pull out. I mean, my feeling, having met Amanda and Mia, dad, her husband, is that they've gone in this for the long haul. We're talking 2017 since your doorstep Lee Charnley at St James's Park against Liverpool, and she hasn't gone away despite Mike Ashley's best efforts to shake her off. And whether it's been a combination of her coming back with more money and with a clear plan, and also coming back during a pandemic when Mike Ashley's businesses are going to suffer massively, and he thinks, I better sell the football club now, otherwise it might not be worth the same amount of money in 12 months' time. It's going to go ahead, and they're not going to pull out, or the Bill.
Steve, I've lost you there.
All right, okay, Bill. I'm just saying, you don't feel that the Saudis are going to pull out, do you? There's been too much work done.
I imagine there's a billionaires WhatsApp group somewhere, and they're all going around saying, "Oh, when you go to Newcastle, people should abuse it. It's terrible, isn't it?" and the thought makes me laugh. They're from the Middle East, where they've. I mean, I loved when we were reading about the Bin Zayed group, and somebody's great grandfather had cut the throat of somebody else's great grandfather involved in the Man City deal. I don't think they're that bothered about what somebody's going to say from Pennywell. They're going back not very far. They're a proud warrior people. I read that King Fahd, when he met Franklin Roosevelt in 1945, took 1,000 sheep along to the aircraft carrier so he could feed everybody on board. They believe in hospitality. They believe, that they're the best friends you get, but they're the most deadly enemies. So yeah, maybe we should remember to kind of, watch our table manners in company, but that's fair enough. I think the Geordies are very proud people as well. And we have resented that our football team has not been properly used as it should be as a force for good in our city and in the world. And it's time for somebody more able and better to come along and have a go. And I think this could be quite an exciting combination, not because it's easy, not because it's some local lad with 100 billion, but because it's quite a difficult thing. But the prizes for getting this right are almost immeasurably huge. And you're talking about almost literally Middle East peace coming along between us. We've got a directors of the club who are of Jewish origin. We've got a potential director of the club who is married to a Shiite Muslim, and Sunni Muslims on the other side. And if they can get on and sign a couple of, I don't know, I'm not saying sign some players. I was going to say sign a left back, but I like Paul Dummett. I like Paul because he had the first lockdown haircut before there was a lockdown. So it's quite an exciting thing. And I think what I've always believed that Newcastle was the first city to pioneer the Industrial Revolution and to have a leisure economy, and to show that you can have the people can have money in their pockets and enjoy themselves. And that's what football's for. It's to go and enjoy yourself, to be with your friends and your family, and to do good from it. And it's not about war and conflict and insults and people talk about that stuff. Fundamentally, it's about going and having a laugh with your friends and enjoying it and talking about the good days. And I think they want to buy into that, and I think that's quite an exciting thing.
Shaun Doran asks, if the takeover is successful, who will announce it first? Will that be a joint thing, do you think? Do you think we'll see, the club coming out first and then Mike Ashley, or how do you see it going?
It's a difficult one because we've obviously looked back with the owners and directors test to see if clubs have failed in the past. And obviously we've also looked at whether the Premier League has made announcements. Typically in the past, they haven't made announcements when the test has been passed, probably just because they've never been under quite this level of public scrutiny. So personally, I think it would be odd if the Premier League announced it, but I know that Rosser thinks that they would make an announcement. Personally, I think it will come from one of those really strange club statements, probably fairly scathing, fairly short, not answering any questions at all. And keep your club notifications on. I mean, for me, it's just a really great opportunity to see how many Newcastle United players, past and present, are having birthdays right now. But keep them on, and I think PIF would have to make some sort of statement to their as an investor as well to let people know. I think that may well be leaked before anything else is. So I think we probably still have to wait for the club.
Yeah, I would agree. Bill, what do you think Mike Ashley's going to do?
There's that one.
It's one of two things. Do you think he's going to say something, or do you think he's just going to leave without a word?
Look, I've never met the man. The people I know who have said he's all right in company. I think he's made a terrible mistake trying to buy Newcastle and then not play with it. I think for a man who is good at developing undervalued brands, I think he made a colossal mistake on many occasions with us. I think we should let him pack his tents and walk away and leave him alone. It didn't work out. Fair enough. I don't think he needs to say anything particularly. Let's let bygones be bygones. We don't need to go after him. I don't care who makes the announcements as long as it's believed. There's that much fake news about. I mean, today's Wednesday. That's all I really believe at the minute. You watch the real news and half of it's so unbelievable that you wouldn't trust it in the first place.
Well, after this pandemic, I just don't believe the news anymore. I'm switching it off, and pretty much like the weather, I just go outside now and see what's happening instead of watching the weather forecast. But that's another issue. Adam Anderson says, I wonder if the new owners would refund the fans their money for the season ticket money being taken, etc., or will they put it down to happening under the Mike Ashley reign? Now, Shell, what I've said to a lot of people, just friends in passing, is that I think the new owners, although they'll come in with a lot of goodwill to start with, I think they'll start with a lot of good win situations, and I think this is one of them, isn't it? They can sort this issue out. They can probably sort out the situation with regards to the 10,000 people who've got free tickets will not have free tickets anymore. So there's 10,000 tickets up for grabs who could be offered back to those who walked away at protest to Ashley. How you sort that out, I don't know. Matty Longstaff's contract could be another win. So do you think that would be the kind of thing that would happen with the new owners?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I probably should know how many season ticket holders there are of NUFC. I guess 30,000 between five and 700 quid. I have said that they're businessmen, but I think in terms of PR and getting off to a right start with the fans, when you've paid 300 million for the club, I think you're probably all right to put your money in your hand in your pocket and pay the fans back. I think it would be a really weird move for them to say, it's to do with Mike Ashley. I think the only plus side of doing it is that the fans will probably accept that it probably is Mike Ashley because of how he's treated the club. But I would certainly be very surprised if they didn't, agree to give back fans money for games not being shown, in particular because, at the moment, if there is a takeover going on, and, Jane from the club's ringing up Mike saying, look, a couple of fans kicking off on Twitter about their cash, Matty Longstaff wants some more money. If you're in the middle of a takeover and Mike Ashley thinks it's going to go through and he's going to sell the club, he's not going to give a shit, frankly, is he? He's going to say, not my problem. But yeah, to answer the question, I think the new owners would be, for the amount of money it's going to cost them to refund, I think it would be a very odd decision to piss off the Geordies that early on.
Yeah, 100%. Bill, it's a good opportunity, isn't it, for new owners to come in and make a good start, though, with a few of these situations that have developed?
I think there's going to be a huge. They've got a good time. I suppose one of the only good things about this lousy situation with COVID-19, and one of the only good things about not really being able to think we're going to see football until, I don't know, maybe October. So we're not just talking about this season. We're probably talking about maybe half of next season as well. Is that they've got a chance to look at how they sell the seats at St James's Park. And obviously, I would say some of those seats should be held for people who cannot afford, the sort of season ticket prices that you've got at the minute. I think others should be very, very expensive. I think you look at like a club like Bayern Munich, they're the kind of economic and social centre of Bavaria, where they have an independent industry. And if you want to sign a contract in Bavaria whether it's got anything to do with football or not, you go to Bayern Munich and do it. We should have that same sort of situation in Newcastle. This is a great opportunity for the new ownership to unite the universities, the economy, the media, the industry that we have here, all of the kind of things that produce and export and do things around the Northeast, and the sort of, the kind of places that don't talk to each other. The universities are all a bit standoffish from the football club. The council historically have never had the greatest relationship. It's a good time to unify all those people and to get all the kind of industrialists and decision makers in one room, and then maybe charge those people £1,000 a ticket to see the match. And if you do that, then you get the opportunity to sell kids from, Water and from Benwell tickets to the match for £5. And that way you can kind of have, the whole Newcastle United in reality, whether you got money or not. And at the same time, you're doing well for the bottom line for the team by selling the posh seats to the posh people who can afford it, and they're there because there's a good economic reason for them to be there. But at the same time, maybe in the cheap seats, you've got some younger kids who can leap up and down. When I was a kid, it didn't cost that much to go to the ground. I probably couldn't have afforded it when I was like, if it was now when I was 16, So I think it would be nice to see some care and attention paid to who comes to the ground, who gets the corporate boxes, what happens there, the communication when you're there, but before, during, and afterwards, and all of that, and to actually have a plan. And the only good thing about COVID-19 is we maybe got 6 months to actually do that. So it's pretty good time for somebody coming in with a clean sheet of paper and to take attention from the various communities that are in the city, and work out what's best for the club going forward.
Yes or no answer to this, because we've already talked a little bit about Matty Longstaff. But Graham York says, would you keep Matty Longstaff? And I have seen, obviously, it seems to be a few negative voices on Twitter saying, well, he's not really proved himself. He hasn't had that many games. Just, I don't see an issue with selling him. Would you keep him, Shaun?
Yes.
Bill? Would you keep Matty Longstaff?
Yeah,
Bill?
100%. I mean, if we're going to get players coming in from outside, they've got to learn what this club means. What? Yes.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. I've got to be honest. I would 100%. Keep. If it came between the two of them, Matty and Shaun, if I had to pick one, I would probably pick Matty. As daft as it sounds, I know he hasn't had as many games, but he's more my type of player. But it'll be interesting to see how things go. Joe Walker says, do the Premier League have a responsibility to look after fans' welfare here? Guessing we're all feeling pretty stressed at the minute. I mean, the lockdown situation is not helping, Shell, but do the Premier League have a responsibility? Not really.
No, unfortunately they don't, and obviously they haven't really had a whole lot of control over how early the media has jumped on it as well, so they're probably feeling a bit stressed and not got as much breathing space as they would have liked. So it's a difficult one. I feel quite stressed about it. I know, Steve, that you've taken a couple of breaks from Twitter, and I think what we need to remember is, the reality is that none of us really know exactly what's going on with the Premier League. None of us really know exactly what's happening with this deal. And what I feel is important is, because it's such a wonderful fan base and the Geordies are just the best people, I don't want everybody to start kind of turning on themselves. And I think, if you're like me and you turn on Twitter every day and see another days being said or another article that is just, when you actually think logically, is just clearly rubbish, I sometimes think you've just got to kind of take a step back. I know that, I think yourself, I know George Colkin, those people have generally, got a position where people trust what they say. And I think, just have a look on their feeds, and otherwise just take yourself outside, or, don't obviously just go for lots of drinks like I do. But I think, there's nothing that we can do. I always think you should get stressed about stuff that's in your control and not out of your control. So, from that perspective, the Premier League don't really care about how we're feeling about it. I think there might be a small amount of pressure for them to speed up the decision, because of not just because of fans' well-being, but just because of the absolute shitstorm that it's caused. But yes, I feel stressed too.
Yeah, good advice, Bill. I think Shell's answered it, but they don't have a responsibility. But fans have a responsibility to be kinder to one another, I think, on social media especially.
I think, look, let's face it, there's the West End Foodbank's feeding 1,300 people a week in our city. 40% of them are children. They can't afford to eat. When they're just eating, they're not getting nice things. They're getting UHT milk with their shreddies. They're getting cheap digestive biscuits. They're getting the worst kind of pasta sauce. They're getting the meatballs that are made out of chicken, not the nice ones. That's pressure. Yeah. That's responsibility. That's welfare. The people of this city have rallied round to, we shouldn't have a food bank in this country. It's an obscenity. But if we have to have one, by God, let's have one like Newcastle has, because everybody from the highest to the lowest has got around and helped out. Pressure we got on, look, we might be getting bought by an insanely rich public investment fund, which is then going to buy loads of players, and we're going to have great football. Well, whoop-de-doo. I'll tell you one thing, I could wait a while for that. That's no problem at all. I suppose, if we hadn't got 3 points against Southampton, we might feel it a little bit, because personally me, because I'm a pessimist, still be worried about getting relegated and things. But in the end of the day, it's going to be all right. Keep it going, stick together, look after each other, and let's look forward to the good times.
Good stuff, Bill. Just while you're on about the food bank, of course, anyone who wants to follow the food bank on Twitter, it's at NUFC Food Bank. Fantastic cause. Newcastle West End charitycheckout.co.uk as well. Join that and follow that. Just to see the good work that people like Bill and everybody else is doing. It's an amazing thing. And as Bill rightly says, it's not something that we should have, but we've got it. Obviously, match day collections impossible at this moment in time. But if you get onto their website and get onto their Twitter, and you want to still help make a difference, then you will be able to do that. While we've been on air as well, just a little bit of breaking news. Newcastle United versus Manchester City is going to be the televised BBC Match of the Day game. So that's good news. Although all our games are getting televised, we didn't know that the FA Cup one was going to be televised. So the date hasn't been confirmed yet, but yeah, we are the televised game. So that is good news. There's a question there from Al G. He says, do you think the slim chances of our cup progression are gone now, as we won't have the vociferous Geordie crowd behind us? It's going to be weird watching football with no crowd noise. Shell, it's something we're going to have to get used to, unfortunately. But, you would like to think that, that game is going to be, possibly under new owners. We might have a situation where it's Mansour against... our own Saudi Arabian connections. It could be the Abu Dhabi derby as a couple of weeks back.
Yeah, it's a weird one, and I know since the German league has been back, we've watched a couple of games and thought, yeah, wow, this is really super weird, and especially because obviously the Geordies are the best fans as well, and certainly away games they make a massive difference. So yeah, it is going to be weird in terms of affecting our chances. I suppose it's kind of a level playing field, especially if we're going to be at neutral venues. But some of me thinks that maybe it might be a good thing in terms of some of our younger players, or the players that have felt a lot of pressure, might actually react better in that scenario. But I'm very excited that it'll be on TV nonetheless, because I'm just so keen to have some football back.
Yeah, me too. Bill, does the crowd make a difference, or do you think that the team should be able to get up for this game?
I think I'm not optimistic about our games in this scenario, because objectively we're a mid-table team, lower mid-table. The players. I think what George Corcoran said, we are the best bad team he's ever seen. And the spirit of the team has been admirable. When you're seeing players who may not be technically amazing, with some exceptions, scoring 2 goals in the final minute against Everton. They're doing that out of guts and heart. And, you'd like to think that's because they're in a cauldron of emotion. And that's going to be taken away. And I don't know, I just think a lot of players are going to be thinking, well, I'm just doing a job here. And I think historically, if you're in our position, it's not like I mean, we kind of all battling against relegation because we're not safe, but we're not kind of really in it. So, and we're not battling for any European positions. So I think we might suffer a little bit because that 2% just isn't there. That teams that are kind of going for, I don't know, Champions League qualification or trying to escape relegation. You saw Watford beat Liverpool 3-0 before all this came down. You know, I can just see a load of funny, you know, results, and I see us on the wrong end of it. And again, I'm a pessimist when it comes to football, unfortunately. And I just want them all over, and I want us to have a load of 0-0 draws. I'll take 6 0-0 draws and get safe, and then hell with it, you know, and get it over with. Because I think, you know, 2020 showed that. Go on, you go.
Yeah, I'm saying you're right, Bill, because you know, I decided to pick up an old copy of True Faith. I mean, I'm always about 6 weeks behind reading, unfortunately, usually in my busy life. But I decided during the pandemic I was going to sit and read some books which I've had on the shelf gathering dust. And so I went back to True Faith thinking, right, the football season's starting again. So I got into it. And then I suddenly started to remember things like, you know, Joe Linton doesn't score goals, that Newcastle had a horrendous run with tissue injuries this season. I suddenly started to get back into the reality and then started to think about what it's going to be like as a pandemic football team, having to play all these games in such an intense space, and then thinking, actually, 35 points, you know, isn't safe. So, you know, we're going to get out of this whole, you know, takeover talk and suddenly get thrust back into the realities of being a Newcastle fan. So you're right, Bill, to have those concerns, I think. And like you said, I said this before the pandemic, I would settle for 6 0-0 draws. I thought we'd scrape it over the line, but you know, it's going to be interesting. I think you're right. There could be a few sneaky results in there and some strange results. Daniel Fox says, hi, guys and ladies. Another great podcast. Shell, with your legal head on, if the takeover gets rejected, do you think we would see an appeal and possible legal action?
Yes. It would depend on why it fails. So if they fail the owners and directors test, then the Premier League would have to say why that it has failed. So, for example, if they found that there was, in their view, too close a link with Sheffield United, or if they found that in their view there was a link for the piracy, they would have to say why. So, and I think that will create a definite legal challenge for sure. You know, I know that you have to have standing to create a legal challenge, and I know that Roster has said that he definitely would want to get the fans together and get a consortium of people to appeal the decision. And I think long term the Premier League will have to be very careful, because they will be setting a precedent if they fail the owners and directors test in relation to human rights law, because we've always said that the test is a legal one, and the only reason that people have generally failed, and not even the Premier League test, the lower league test, is where there's been an issue about them keeping enough money in the club. So if they start saying that actually now the test is an ethical one, that will be a problem. I think from the comments from the Premier League, which have been very limited, they've suggested that in future that's something that might be something that they consider, but at the moment I can't see any grounds on which they could fail it. So if they did, the lawyers would be absolutely all over it. And also, I think that there will be questions and eyebrows raised in terms of other clubs, because, you know, other clubs have had similar arguments raised and still passed the test. And, you know, lots of people saying, you know, Mike Ashley isn't fit himself to be, you know, an owner and a director of a football club. So, yeah, I think there would definitely be an appeal on the cards.
Yeah, that's positive. Eugene McGeever says Newcastle have increased the Longstaff offer according to the Sky Sports News website. Again, I'm not sure where that story's actually come from when the club aren't talking to the supporters at all. It's interesting. NLR, looking on the bright side of life, he says, Steve, it's one of the best runs we've ever had, unbeaten for 3 months. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. Tom Dixon says, an excellent show again. Fully enjoy listening to them. Thanks, Tom. Thanks for tuning in. George Mitchell, good to hear from you, George. He says, Mike Ashley missed an opportunity to be a real hero on Tyneside. And I have to agree. I mean, you know, what is Mike Ashley's epitaph going to be, Bill? Because, you know, he came in, he rode in on a white steed to save us from bankruptcy, really. You know, it wasn't going well with Shepherd and Hall, and they, you know, Sir John Hall, by his own admission, was never going to be able to compete with Abramovich. What will Mike Ashley's epitaph be at the club?
Sorry,
Mike Ashley's like. Sorry, where was I? What Mike Ashley's epitaph?
Yeah.
Missed the boat, missed an opportunity, failed to see what was right in front of him. A shame for him and a tragedy for us, but a wasted 13 years. I think he possibly might concur with that, you know.
Yeah. What about you, Shell? What do you think about Mike Ashley? I mean, could it have ever worked with Mike Ashley, do you think?
I think he kind of thought so at the beginning. I think he was trying to make the right noises, but ultimately, I think I just think he's a businessman. That's what I think. I know, you know, I know that the law firms who act for him, and I know the way that he does his business, particularly in relation to Sports Direct. And I just don't think that ever works with a club like Newcastle. You know, there is a lot to offer, and the thing is, the fans have never really expected that much. You know, we'd like you to offer, you know, Matty Longstaff a decent contract. We'd like to have, you know, a striker who can score some goals. That's all that we've really ever asked. You know, we'd like sometimes to have enough players in our squad to be able to have a cup run of sorts. You know, that's all that we've ever asked. And I think it became pretty obvious early on that just wasn't going to fit in with Mike Ashley's agenda. So it wasn't going to work for him. And I think that the feeling now is just so negative. I think he realised, you know, a couple of years ago that he wasn't going to get to where he needed to be, and has just basically given up on the club and lost all respect for the fans. And so, as far as I'm concerned, you can't get that back.
Yeah, 100%. Shaun Foreman says, if the takeover happens, what would you like the owners to do to get the fans on board? Bill, what do you think is important for the new owners to do from the off?
I think like any business, they need to know it from top to bottom, and they need to know their customers very well, and they need to know their responsibilities. Newcastle United isn't just a football club. It's the warrior heart of the Northumbrian tradition. This goes back thousands of years to where we faced down the Romans, fought off the Vikings, kept the Normans on their toes, defeated the Scots on many occasions. You know, the black and white comes from when we fought the Scots off in 1644, when we defended the castle. The defenders of the castle painted their leather jerkins with black and white stripes to differentiate themselves. Now, if you start understanding that this is an institution that goes back into the hearts and souls and brains and hands of the people, and the walls at Gallagher will talk, and they'll tell you about the families and the friendships that have been made there, and how important it is, and why there's people all over the world, in communities, in every city, in every continent, where railways went, where shipyards went, where industry from our people went, where our grandfathers emigrated to, and there's people there support Newcastle. And they don't support Newcastle because we're a great football team, although we used to be the best football team in the world in 1910, 1914, and we're the best supported football team in 1946-47 after the Second World War, even though we're the second division. So we can be the greatest football team in the world. We have been the greatest football team in the world, but fundamentally, we represent the city and its people, and those people are unmatchable in this world, and we have proved it over and over again. So once they understand that and they talk to the people with goodwill, then all they got to do is carry on talking and carry on learning, and we'll learn from them, and we'll carry on giving what we can to the club in our city, and it'll go on for years and years, and we'll all be happily ever after.
Lots of people asking us if I can get Joey Barton on. I have asked Joey, no comment, nothing from him, unfortunately. You know, as I said, I have asked a few of the people that you've asked for. Alan Shearer is contracted, unfortunately, would love to do it, but can't. But, you know, there will be other names coming on over the next few weeks. It's just a matter of, you know, unfortunately, some people are contracted to football clubs. Shea Given would love to come on, but he's contracted still, you know, at a club. And unfortunately, some people don't like to come on to unofficial podcasts, shall we say, if you know, if they don't have the protection that they would normally have on a national radio station. But that doesn't mean that they're dissing us. It just means, unfortunately, they have to look after their contracts, and that's fair. That's fair comment. But Joey Barton, I've had no response, but I'm sure if you badger him on Twitter and keep asking him, he might give me a response. Yes or no. Sean Connor says, Steve, do you think the fans are setting expectations too high? We've seen in other takeovers where money's been promised but never materialised to the extent the fans anticipated. Now, Shell, I saw an article that George did, not laying out what they're going to do, but I thought that he basically played it down that there's a hell of a lot of money needs to be invested in not only the team, but mainly the infrastructure, the academy, the training facilities, and of course the ground. So I think people expecting to see Messi and Ronaldo running out in St James's Park in the next couple of years may be disappointed, but I think most level-headed fans understand that this takeover is long-term and it's going to be a long-term plan.
Yeah, and it's difficult because obviously, we've been basically starved of any decent transfers for such a long time. People have been asking a bit about financial fair play. We did a thread on that, and I think the fact that Mike Ashley's been so stingy, without going into any of the detail on it, will actually help. It means that there is a good budget for them making signings. But, as Bill said, it's also about them having a longer term plan. And if they go about it the way that the new owners of Leicester did, they'll want to invest in the city, donate some money to the Foodbank, obviously. And it's more about, the academy and the ground and the training facilities. And I think as long as the fans see that some actual time, money and care is being put into our club and into the city, I think that will be enough for them. That said, I wouldn't mind Ronaldo.
Good stuff. Bill, I mean, expectations, I think, won't get out of control with our supporters simply because, we're used to getting nothing at the moment. So anything's a bonus.
Steve, I've lost your sound, but if it's about expectations, I'd just like us to go to a season not being worried about getting relegated like we have been for the last, 10 years. Now, relegation, to be honest, as a football fan, I quite enjoyed the Championship. You get more home matches. We see old friends like Nottingham Forest and Sheffield Wednesday, great trips to Cardiff. All of that's tremendous. Who wants to go to Bournemouth and Watford? Geez, But when it comes to the city, it's not realised that the University of Newcastle lost about 10% of its postgraduate applications when we got relegated in 2009 because the kids were going, oh, no, I want to go somewhere in the Premiership. And that has a direct effect on the economy. When you're a medium-sized regional city like that, you need your football team in the Premiership because you need to have your institutions made aware of that sort of stuff. Leeds has suffered massively because of that. And so relegation isn't just a sporting problem. It's a real economic issue. And I suppose you look at our neighbours down the road, people probably stop looking at them and find them on the map soon, bless them.
Tom Dixon says, Shell, if the takeover fails, do you think the other people will come in and buy the Premier League club, Newcastle United? I mean, it's not likely, is it? I think a lot of these, rumored, other buyers are literally that rumored.
Yeah, again, I haven't seen anything from any decent sources or any proper offers on the table. But then why would there be when this one is, fairly advanced as far as we can see? So I think it's very clear that Mike Ashley wants to sell. I think it's, a good time in terms of bargaining power and him not pulling out because he's not going to get a better offer from, a wealthier buyer than he's got now. His businesses are not doing well in lockdown. Assuming that he can keep the 300 or whatever the final number is, he can keep to that value, then he's had a good sale, given that everything has plummeted in recent weeks. So I think the point remains, if it falls through, and obviously we hope it doesn't, then I think he will be on the table to sell, and he may be slightly negotiable on price, which is a good thing for fans. But ultimately, I'm not sure I can really go through this again. So I really hope that it goes through.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Well, we're coming to the end of the show. It's been fantastic having you both on. Colin Wilson's just basically saying what everybody else is saying. Another great show once again. Thank you, lady and lads. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I just want to thank the lads from Gallagher Shots, who Red Rose Michelle is often found on their podcast. There's a great one on there if you want to have a look from about 20 hours ago, and that's basically Red Rose Michelle and RJ Rosser talking with Football Law, and they're discussing the most recent blog, which covers the Premier League's current owners test. So you get on to Gallagher Shots, which is at Gallagher Shots. Give that a listen. It's a great listen. And as I say, give Michelle a follow at Red Rose Michelle. Great to have you on, and thanks for coming on and sharing your insight. And hopefully we'll be able to get you on, once again to share your knowledge. It's been great having you on, Shell.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Steve.
Bill, great to have you on as well. And of course, Bill Corcoran is on Twitter as well. We've got Bill on, obviously representing the Foodbank, and as I say, I gave that a name check earlier. But Bill Corcoran's on Twitter as well. Give him a follow. And once we get back to having a pint, get yourselves down to the Tyneside Irish Centre and let's all have a Kaylee together with the well.
It's got some good talkings coming up soon though in September, Steve, hasn't it?
It has, yeah.
So
I'm doing.
Mr. Fury's coming in.
Yeah, we've got John Fury on. That should be really good. It should be a good night.
That's
so
it, yeah, of course.
Yeah, but listen, thanks for coming on, guys, and hopefully the next time we all meet, it'll be under slightly happier circumstances with the new owner. But thanks very much for your time.
Thanks very much, and thanks to everyone that joined in.
Cheers. Bye, Michelle.
Everybody, thanks, Steve. Thanks.
Cheers, Bill. Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Tomorrow night, I have got John Gibson from the Evening Chronicle. He is joining us at 6 o'clock, 6 till 7. Again, I've got to guide him through the technical side of it. So John Gibson will be joining me tomorrow night, 6 till 7. Friday night, I will be back with a Geordie dentist. And then Saturday afternoon, it'll be me and Lee Clark. Then I'll have to basically go back to Instagram. So follow me on Instagram at Steve Wraith if you want to watch the live shows. If you're not bothered about watching them live, you'll be able to watch them on catch up on YouTube for the next 10 days. Basically, I've got to work with the software, the StreamYard software. I only get a certain amount of hours, and I've surpassed them this month by giving you these shows. So you'll have to follow me on Instagram at Steve Wraith if you want to be live. But great to have you with us tonight. I will see you 6 o'clock tomorrow with John Gibson from the Evening Chronicle. Good night. God bless. I wish you well.